The restoration of Great Waterton was complete. Tourists bustled about, eager to see the revival of the old town. Stanley was managing the line well, but the Fat Controller asked Molly to assist with passenger trains. Neville was also assigned to deliver goods for the local merchants. The three engines got on swimmingly well. When Molly and Neville first arrived, Stanley was joyful. He always smiled and whistled loudly as he passed. But as time went on, Molly noticed a change. Stanley became timid and withdrawn. He didn't speak much and seemed to be almost skittish. Molly decided it is best to keep a watchful eye on him. One morning, Molly was waiting at the platform as Stanley bustled in. "Good morning," she said cheerfully. Stanley didn't reply, because if he hadn't noticed Molly, he seemed to be looking for something. "Stanley!" Molly shouted and let out a loud whistle. That did the trick. Stanley jumped. "Oh, goodness! I didn't see you there, Molly. How are you? I should be asking you the same thing. Is something the matter?" "Oh, no, nothing at all," Stanley replied hastily. "I was just seeing how busy the town is today. Must be off to the water tower. Goodbye." "I don't understand it," she said to Neville that afternoon. "He's not the same Stanley who first arrived on the island. I think something's up." "Oh, I don't know," Neville answered, rather dismissively. "Perhaps he's just adjusting to his new routine. I'm sure running a busy branch line comes with stress." Molly wasn't convinced, but said no more as the two engines went back to work. Neville was late returning to Great Waterton that night. He had to collect building materials from the docks, but the boat from the mainland was delayed. By the time he arrived, darkness had fallen, and mist hung in the air. He could see Stanley at the platform looking around. He decided to go to speak to him, so he moved slowly out of the siding, trying to see through the mist when suddenly Stanley appeared from the mist and collided with him. "Ouch!" Neville cried. Stanley was startled. "Oh dear, I'm sorry if I woke you." Neville hesitated. In the distance, he thought he could hear a slow puffing sound. "What on earth are you doing?" he said, turning back to Stanley. "Oh, well, I thought I'd forgotten to tidy some of the trucks for you," startled Stanley. "Silly me. Looks like I better head back to my shed. Good night." And Stanley shot off into the mist, leaving Neville speechless. He told Molly everything next morning. "You say you heard another engine?" she quizzed. "That can't be right. It certainly sounded like another engine," frowned Neville. "But Stanley was the only one working this line when we arrived." "That we know of," said Molly. "I know an engine who might have an answer." Later that afternoon, Molly was at the junction as Thomas bustled in. "Hello, Molly," he smiled. "How are things at Great Waterton? Not letting my hard work go to waste, are you?" "Certainly not," chuckled Molly. "Although, there is one thing I need to ask you," she explained about Stanley's strange behavior and Neville's encounter. "I'm sorry, Molly," replied Thomas. "There was no engine left when I found Great Waterton. We did find a rusty old tender at the platform, but no sign of an engine." "Where is the tender now?" Molly asked. "Who knows," said Thomas. "At the scrapyard, I reckon. No use for it now, sadly." "Maybe that's what Stanley's looking for," cried Molly. "I must talk to him. Thank you, Thomas." Molly raced away with her passengers. She tried to find Stanley all day, but to no avail. She made a plan, one which could only happen at night. When darkness fell, Molly crept towards Stanley's shed. The mist hung low again, and everything looked spooky. She wished Neville was coming with her, but he had been called away to collect a special load. She bravely crept closer and closer, then stopped dead in her tracks. There was Stanley in his shed, and a very old rusted engine sat beside him. It had an enormous look on its face. Molly wasn't sure if it was the mist, but it was as if she could see right through it. Stanley was pale and quivered as the engine stared him down. "Where is it?" growled the engine. I don't know," cried Stanley. "I've been searching everywhere." "Where is it?" the engine repeated in a loud growl. "I don't know," Stanley wailed, almost in tears. "But I'll promise." "Stanley!" Molly rushed forward. Stanley looked even more afraid now. "What on earth is going on? And who is this?" she demanded, eyeing the old engine. Molly remained composed as the old engine stared at her. "Where is it?" demanded the engine louder than ever. "I don't know what you're looking for," Molly snapped, trying to sound brave. "But you're not welcome here. Leave Stanley alone." And everything stopped as a whistle cut through the air. It was Neville. He was pulling a flatbed with an old tender pier on top of it. Neville jumped and braked hard as he saw the old engine. To Molly's surprise, the grimace on the engine's face curved into a smile, and his eyes began twinkling. "You found it," he said happily. "Thank you." Then suddenly, he disappeared into the mist. Out of Neville's cab stepped the Fat Controller, who was most surprised. "Where did you find that tender?" Stanley gasped. "It was mistakenly taken to the scrapyard when the restoration began," replied the Fat Controller. "I had asked that it remain here in honor of him." "But who is he, sir?" asked Neville. "An engine who once worked this line," replied the Fat Controller. "A man who lived in the village told me of its legend. When the line was forced to close, the engine was left behind in hopes that the villagers could find him a new home. I was told that when they returned to rescue him, he was gone. Only the tender remained. It's believed scrap merchants found him, took him to pieces, and..." The Fat Controller paused to compose himself. "That was that. Many of the surrounding villagers claim they hear whistles and steam after the line closed, but there was never an engine to be found. It seems that the engine has been visiting you, Stanley." Everyone turned back to Stanley, who now looked miserable. "I was afraid of him," he sighed. "I thought he was going to hurt me, when all he wanted was his tender, to be a complete engine again. But you tried to help him, Stanley." Molly smiled. "You showed him kindness, and that speaks volumes about the engine you are." "Hear, hear," cheered Neville. For the first time in days, Stanley smiled. The Fat Controller commissioned a monument at the center of Great Waterton Square. The old tender sat on a pile with a plaque to commemorate the legend of the old engine. The other engines can see it from the platform. They all give cheerful whistles as they pass by, but no one whistles louder or longer than Stanley.